Hi, it's Heather Baker here with the Week 2 status update for the Cooperate application design and development. The first thing I'll be going over with you is how my time was spent throughout this week during the design and the development process. My time tracking for the week was originally somewhat hindered due to the rescue time application not functioning properly on my MacBook Pro. However, once I was able to get everything working properly by Wednesday, you can see my time logged. The Google Chrome time is time spent researching core data and multi-peer connectivity. However, some of the time in Slack and Adobe Illustrator was for another project that I am lead iOS developer on. Going to Thursday, you can see most of my development time where I was integrating the login and the user creation for both the parent and child. And going down into the simulator, you can also see that there was quite a bit of time spent testing each of those features as they were being integrated. On Friday, my time was somewhat evenly split between Xcode and Google Chrome. However, the time spent on Slack and Adobe Illustrator, they are for another project. On Saturday, you can see about 5 hours spent in Xcode, which was spent between working on the multi-peer connectivity functionality for the parent to set the PIN for the child, as well as saving the data from chores in the chore creation view controller. The time spent here on Xcode today was rollover from Saturday night, where I stayed up finishing the functionality and working out the bugs that I had with the core data and the multi-peer connectivity. The breakdown of my time for the week and the statistics here in the time rescue application show me that I need to segment the two projects that I do have going on. Rather than bouncing back and forth throughout the day between my freelance project and the cooperation application, I need to segment that time focusing on one application at a time, which will definitely increase my productivity. The majority of my research time this week was spent on core data, allowing me to create this SQLite database schema that can accommodate all of the data that needs to be saved and transferred within this application. There is a child class allowing a name and a PIN to be set, as well as a too-many relationship between the child and the chores. This relationship was the most of my time spent on research. This is a feature of core data that I was formerly unfamiliar with until the research for this week started, which did take some additional time after development started to go back to the research and refine my code. This section of the code is what caused most of my time spent debugging. Here I'm setting the values for the new chore and then deciding whether or not a child will be selected for the too-many relationship. Originally, I was attempting to set the too-many relationship, which was causing quite a few errors that I was unable to debug. After some more research, I learned that setting the inverse of that relationship is much simpler. So you'll see that I'm setting the child as the assigned to rather than the chore as a part of the too-many relationship, which allows the application to run smoothly and save the chore into core data with either a child set for that relationship or not if one was not selected. This is the storyboard of the application, which allows you to see all of the features that have been created thus far. The entire program is rooted within a navigation controller, allowing simple navigation throughout the application, as well as enabling the browser peer connection. From the main screen, the user is able to select whether they're a parent or child. If child is selected, they'll come to a place where they can either select an existing child user or create a new one. And then from there, there's a segue to the main child view controller. If parent is selected, the user is then prompted to input a PIN. If it's the first time opening the application, they'll be prompted to input a new PIN. Subsequent uses will prompt them to verify the PIN that has already been created to enable the parent functionality, which will then segue them to the main parent view controller, which allows them to see the current children that they're authorized for, up to 3 children, and all of the assigned chores, completed chores, and money earned thus far. The parent then has the ability to either lock the application, sync with a child, create a chore, or view past chores, as well as tap on one of the table view cells to view the details of their child. The segues to these view controllers are implemented. However, the functionality for these view controllers are implemented in upcoming sprints. The new chore view controller, however, does have completed functionality where the user is able to input the title, the payout, the estimated time period details as an optional value, as well as scroll through the children that are available to assign the chore to, or choose no child and just save the chore within the application for future use. They also have the option to create a mandatory or optional chore and select the priority of the chore, which can then be filtered in the chore view for the child. When the Save Chore button is pressed, the new chore is then saved into core data, and the parent user is then segued back to their main view controller with updated data. For demonstration purposes, I'll be showing you the functionality of the application on the simulator. However, there is an iPad running the application to implement the pairing functionality. When the user first opens the application, they're able to select whether they're a parent or child. When the parent is selected, they're first prompted on the initial use of the application to create a 4-digit PIN. And now by doing so, they are of course required to implement the same PIN. Once the PIN has been input, it does save to the core data, and the user is then segued to the main parent view controller, which allows them to see the children that they do have available to them, as well as lock the device should they want to allow their child to use the same device. And then coming back into the parent view controller, they are prompted to input their PIN again. If the wrong PIN is input, the user is given a prompt explaining to them that the PIN does not match the saved PIN, and then they're able to log in again using the correct PIN. From this view controller, the user has the opportunity to sync with a child, as well as tap on one of their children to view the details of that child. The past chore segue is implemented and the unwind does go back to the main parent view controller, and the user is also able to create a chore, segueing them to the create chore view controller, which allows them to input the title, the payout, the estimated minutes of the chore, details if they prefer, which are not required, and select a child. The chore can be either mandatory or optional, and a priority can then be selected. Once the chore is saved, the chore is saved into core data, and the parent is segued back to their main view controller where they're able to see the updated data within the table view. When the parent goes to sync, they're able to connect with other users of the application, and once the connection is made, the browser view controller dismisses if this is the first time the parent has connected with a child, or if a PIN has not yet been set by another parent user. The parent is prompted to input a new PIN for the child. And from there, they'll see a prompt that the PIN has been set for the child, and then they'll be able to assign chores to that new child, which then segues the user to the sync view controller, which will be created in a subsequent sprint. When the child first logs on, they have the opportunity to select between current children as well as create a new child. And since there has not yet been a PIN set for this child, the child is then prompted to connect with a parent to have that PIN set. The majority of my time spent this week developing this application was spent dealing with the core data and the multi-peer functionality. There was some time that was spent going back to the research to update the core data schema, as well as with the multi-peer connectivity to be able to immediately send the data back and forth, which required me to dismiss the browser view controller immediately upon connection to ready the devices for the data transfer. The research this week was spent entirely on the multi-peer connectivity and the core data functionality. There was a lot of time spent on the core data functionality. However, with the multi-peer connectivity, it did go much quicker than I initially anticipated. Being able to send the data through an NS dictionary from device to device was an excellent solution to that, allowing multiple pieces of data to be sent at any given time and easily parsed in the receiving view controller. When it comes to my time consumption, after beginning the development process, there was some extra time consumption going back to the research to update processes within the application that could have easily been anticipated having done further research. So for future time management, more thoroughly researching something that I'm unfamiliar with before starting development can definitely save time in the long run. The features that have been successfully completed in this application are the view controllers for the users to be able to select who they are and create their user within it, whether they're a parent or a child, as well as the multi-peer functionality and the core data functionality for a chore to be saved and for the PIN to be set from device to device. The main parent view controller was also implemented with the table view to be able to see all of the current authorized children as well as the data that goes along with those children. All of the milestone items for this week were completed. The project timeline is still on track, even though those additional hours were spent on research. However, it did cause a couple of late nights. When it comes to time management in the future, due to my new job as lead iOS developer on a freelance application, it's definitely important to focus my time on either one application or the other at any given time, rather than bouncing back and forth between the two different applications to manage my time better. There was additional time spent in research and development of this. Most of that time was spent on creating assets. There was backgrounds, icons, branding icons, user icons that were created in the first day of development and design. Beyond that, there were some bugs that were somewhat difficult to overcome when it comes to the multi-peer functionality due to the fact that I was unable to debug on two devices at the same time with Xcode. However, after some research, I was able to understand that dismissing the browser view controller would solve the problem that I encountered. When it comes to the core data, there was a few changes in the schema along the way. However, at this point, there is a viable schema to work with, laying the groundwork for the rest of the application. The laid out plan is working well so far, with a few minor hiccups along the way. One thing that I do see as necessary integration would be to add a log out button for the child, allowing multiple children to use the same device.